Hey everyone, it's Paige, and today I'm going to be doing my 2017 year in review. I'm going to be talking about a couple different things in this video. First off being all the really exciting things that happened in 2017, and then I'm going to talk about my favorite books and my least favorite books. One of the first really exciting things that happened in 2017 was Emily from Blue Eyed Biblio came and visited me when I was still living in Denver, and we had a really great time. That was the first time we had met in person, and then I also visited her later in the year in Ohio, and then she also came and visited me in California, so that was super exciting to hang out with her a couple times this year. And then in April I went to London for the first time for my kind of what I was calling my Beatles excursion. I went for 2.5 weeks. I went to London and Liverpool, and I went and saw a bunch of different Beatles sites and saw a bunch of different really cool London things too, and I was just swept away by the city and the country, and I traveled all by myself. That was the first time I had gone to a foreign country by myself, and it was just so much fun. Oh, that was such a good time. And then in September I went back for the Pink Floyd exhibit that was going on in London at the Victoria and Albert Museum, which was also really cool and really exciting. I went for about 1.5 weeks, and I went by myself again, and I just had a really fun time again, like exploring the city and kind of knowing more of where things were at, which was really fun. And I was exploring some of the grad schools that I was applying to, because in November I found out that I got into one of the grad schools that I had looked at, so I will be attending grad school for a creative writing master's program next year in London, which is very exciting, and I cannot wait. Something else that was really important and special to me was in June I went to a Roger Waters concert with my dad. My parents bought me the tickets for my birthday. If you're not aware, Roger Waters is the bassist from Pink Floyd, so it was super cool to go and see him perform. It was just a really incredible experience, and I probably cried, I think, and my dad was probably really fed up with me, but I just had a blast. It was really fun, really powerful, moving concert. In March I graduated early with honors from college, and then in June I went back for the ceremony, which was really fun and really sad to say goodbye to everyone in Denver, but I had a lot of fun, and college was a really emotional and interesting experience, and I will remember those 4 years forever because they were really important to me, but I had a lot of fun. Also, with that being the end of my senior year, I finished my thesis, which ended up being about 60 pages, and I also got it copyrighted, so it's now officially in the Library of Congress, which is also very exciting. I got like an official certificate and everything, which I wasn't really expecting, but that's very exciting too, and hopefully I will have it published at some point for everyone else to read, because I know a lot of people have been really interested in it, but for the time being it's just something that I'm going to hold on to for myself. And then the last really exciting thing of the year was I got a new job, and I'm having a blast working there. It is really fun, really high energy, and I will be working there until September when I head off to England for my master's program. Also, if you want to check out more highlights from my year, you can check out the vlog that I have down below. It's basically just a bunch of highlights of a few videos and photos that I took in 2017. There's also a link down there for the vlog that I have for when I went to London in September and October, so you can check that out too. So those are some very exciting things that happened to me in 2017. Now let's get into some of the awesome and terrible books that I read this year. Before I jump into that, I'm going to be talking about a couple statistics. As of the filming of this video, I have read 82 books this year. My goal was 100, but I didn't quite reach that, which is fine. I'm trying to not have a reading challenge or goal for next year, so that's totally fine with me that I didn't reach it. Goodreads also says that I read 22,628 pages, and some of those pages included Winter by Marissa Meyer, which is the longest book I read this year, and it clocked in at 827 pages. And I loved this book. It was really good. The shortest book I read was only 2 pages, and that was because it was the holiday piece from Maggie Stiefvater's Raven Boys series. It was just kind of a little prequel thing that she had written that that takes place prior to the Raven Boys. Alright, so I have quite a few favorite books that I read this year, so let's jump right into this thing. I have a total of 14 books that I picked as my all-time favorites of 2017. In the very beginning of the year, I got a surprise package from Penguin when I was still in school, and that included We Are Okay by Nina LaCour, and I read this and I loved it. It was beautiful and amazing, and I've been recommending it to everyone like ever since I finished it. Obviously I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, and I had never read anything by Nina LaCour before, but this was just incredible. And I got to meet her this year at the LA Times Festival of Books, which was also really exciting and really cool. She's super nice. Another really great one I read this year was All American Boys by Jason Reynolds and Brendan Keeley. Also authors that I met this year, and this was just a really powerful and important and beautiful novel that I also recommend to everyone because it's just amazing and I loved it. I can't say enough good things about Jason Reynolds and his writing, and I need to read more of it, but this was the first one that I had read by either of them, and it was just, I loved it. I loved it. Last year I read The White Album by Joan Didion, which was the first book I had ever read by her, and I had to read it for a class, and so I decided this year to pick up South and West by her, which kind of talked about the South and the West of the United States. So I just adored that. I love Joan Didion's writing. She's incredible, and it was amazing, and I pre-ordered the paperback, which is why I don't have it with me, so I will be getting that after the new year. Another really fun novel that I read this year was Queens of Geek by Jen Wilde. I loved this. I've been to comic conventions before, and they're just so much fun, and it was really fun to just dive into this world of a lot of excitement and romance, and it was just a really sweet story that took place over about 3 days, so I really like stories that are like that. It reminded me a lot of Jennifer E. Smith's books. This next book was something that was recommended to me by Emily because it is her favorite book, and that is The House on Mango Street by Sandra Cisneros, and I absolutely love that. I flew through it in like less than an hour, and I'm really upset that I don't have one with me. I thought I bought one this year, so I need to get on that, but that was a really powerful and moving book too. When I was in London, I picked this up because it was a excellent sale, and that's The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas, and I started reading it there, and then I just breezed through it. It was such a beautiful novel. Another author that I got to meet this year, and she's incredible and amazing, and if you don't follow her on Twitter, do that because she is just awesome. And this novel is awesome, obviously. Switching gears a little bit, the next book that I read that was really incredible this year was Inside Out, A Personal History of Pink Floyd by Nick Mason, who is the drummer of Pink Floyd. I freaking loved this book. I loved hearing about the band from the perspective of someone who was in the band, and I loved seeing all of these new pictures that I hadn't seen before on like Tumblr or something. So I just adored this, and Nick Mason is super funny. I would love to meet him. He's just really dry British humor, and his Twitter is hilarious too. Another Twitter that you should follow. A book that I read during the summertime that I really enjoyed was Genuine Fraud by E. Lockhart. I know a lot of people didn't like this, but I actually really loved it. I've never read anything by E. No, that's not true. I have read something by E. Lockhart before, but it was like way back in high school, so it's been a really long time. I haven't read We Were Liars, but people said it's much better than this one. It's kind of that same sort of tone and story type thing where everything is a little bit backwards and you don't know what's going on, but I just really liked this. This next one is a series, actually a duology, and most people know that I love this series, and that's Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo, an incredible series that I loved and I read with Sam, and it was just so much fun for us to buddy read and kind of text each other the entire time and be like, oh my gosh, can you believe that just happened? So this was a really fun series to read, and I hope that we get another book, but you know what, at this point I kind of doubt it, but I just really loved this. This next one was something I read on the plane ride to Ohio to visit Emily, and that's Warcross by Marie Lu. I breezed through this thing because first of all, the plane ride was super long, and secondly, this book is just amazing. I think it won a Goodreads prize thing? I voted for it. I don't know. Another author that I met this year, she was super awesome, and I just freaking loved this book. I've never read anything else by her before, and this was the first one that I picked up, and it was amazing. I finally read the Raven Boys series this year, and my favorite one of that was The Dream Thieves, and obviously this is by Maggie Stiefvater, an author that I met again this year. I've met her before, and she was just awesome and amazing as usual. She also recognized me again, which was super fun, so I was really overjoyed to finally read this and then see her in person again. It was just really fun experience. And the last book of this, The Raven King, I actually read when I was in London. So whenever I think about that, I think about London, which is really funny. But I just really loved this series, mostly because this book in particular is centered more around Ronan, who is my favorite character of this series, and I loved it. I loved it. This next book was something I bought in London because I didn't want to pay international shipping on it. It would have been like way too expensive, and that's In the Pink, Not a Hunting Memoir by Nick Sedgwick. This is a book that talks about the band Pink Floyd when they toured in 1972 to 1974 for their Dark Side of the Moon tour, but it also talks about when Roger Waters and his wife at the time went on vacation, I think in France? I don't really remember where, but Nick Sedgwick was Roger Waters' friend, and he kind of hung around him and the band and then wrote all of this stuff. This book was supposed to come out in the 70s, but didn't until this year, so I freaked out when I found out this was coming out, and I breezed through it on my trip to London, and it was really awesome, and there was also pictures in here that I'd never seen before, which was really fun, and I love Pink Floyd, so this was really cool to read. This next book is probably one of my all-time favorite books, like ever, not just this year, but all-time favorite. I actually got my mom to read it this year, and that's Dear Martin by Nick Stone. This book is freaking incredible, and I tell everyone they need to read this because it's just beautiful and emotional, and I have a review down below that you can look at because all my thoughts are there where I kind of gathered myself a little bit more, but this is awesome and you should read it. I'm never sure if I should include books that are being published in 2018, but I did read this in 2017, and that's A Girl Like That by Tanaz Bethenia. Again, probably one of my favorite books of all time, not just this year. This also was just really emotional and made me cry a lot and was beautiful, and I just loved the story. And again, you should totally read this, pre-order it, buy it, whatever. Just read this book. This next book is something that I also loved this year, and it was really beautiful and like beautifully written, and I just loved it so much, and that's Wild Beauty by Anna Marie McLemore. I always pronounce her name wrong, but it was a wonderful, beautifully told story, and I loved it, and I'd heard only good things before I picked it up, so I'm so glad that I read that this year. This next one was recommended to me by my old roommate from college, Alicia. Thank you so much, Alicia. And that's Love Letters to the Dead by Ava DeLaria. A beautiful novel too, also made me cry a lot. I really loved this. Ava DeLaria is having another book published next year, which I have the arc of, and I'm super excited to check out. I hope it's as good as this one because I just loved this so much. I have a couple books that are honorable mentions that didn't quite make it into my top favorites, but were also really awesome. And one of them that I've already mentioned is Winter by Marissa Meyer. I finally finished the series and I love it, and I've met Marissa Meyer twice, and she's amazing and awesome, and I just think this series is her best. I read Renegades this year and I didn't really like it, but she just hit gold with the Lunar Chronicles because it's incredible. Another honorable mention goes to An Enchantment of Ravens by Margaret Rogerson. Another honorable mention goes to Wonder Woman Warbringer by Leigh Bardugo. I loved this. It was great. And then in that same kind of vein is Batman Nightwalker by Marie Lu. This technically comes out next year, but I read it this year and was something that I just really liked. It was a really fun novel. I think I liked it better than the Wonder Woman one, mostly because I am more familiar with Batman and I just really like his character a little bit more, but really enjoyed this novel. My last honorable mention goes to Voices from Chernobyl, and it is by an author whose name I'm going to put here because I cannot pronounce it, and it was just a beautiful, really scary and terrifying novel. Okay, now I'm going to talk about the worst books I read in 2017, and there's only 8 of these, and I'm going to pretty much just breeze through them because I don't really have a lot to say about them. This first one I had to read for class, and that's The Stranger by Albert Camus. I absolutely hated this book. I didn't understand it. I didn't like it. I wasn't a huge fan of the class that I had to read it for, and it was just boring and way out of my scope. This next one is kind of a pair to that one, and I also had to read it for that class, and it's a book, if you look it up, you'll see why they kind of go together, and that's The Meursault Investigation by Kamel Daoud. I hated it. I just didn't like it. And then the last one that I also had to read for that class that was required reading was White Noise by Dawn DeLillo. I hated that one too. I didn't understand it. It was too long, and I breezed through pretty much all of it. I had to write a paper on it, which I got an A in that class, so I have no idea what I even wrote about, but I didn't like it. Another book that I tried to read this year, but I eventually DNF'd, was A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J. Maas. most people know why I don't like this series, and I'm just gonna leave it at that. A book that I actually expected to like more this year but ended up hating was Milk and Honey by Rupi Kaur. I'm not a big fan of poetry, and I didn't really like her style. Nothing wrong with that. I just didn't like it. Also, another book that I DNF'd this year because I tried to read it but ultimately didn't end up liking it was As She Fades by Abby Glines. I've read books by her before and really enjoyed them in the past, but that was before I was a more critical reader. So when I started reading this one, I just was so fed up with the characters, and I think I stopped after like 50 pages. A book that I did finish and that was not required reading or anything like that was To Kill a Kingdom by Alexandra Christo. I expected to really like this book. I think the premise was there, but the story ultimately fell flat. And I have a complete review below if you want to check out all my thoughts there on why I didn't like it. And then the last one was something that I buddy read with Sam, and we actually enjoyed making fun of it more than we enjoyed reading it, and that's Pride and Prejudice and Mistletoe by Melissa De La Cruz. I've read Melissa De La Cruz in the past, I've met her, I really enjoyed her other writing, but this book just was not her strong suit. It honestly felt ghostwritten, and the entire thing was kind of meh. So those are my favorites and least favorites of 2017. I would love to hear what you guys read this year. If you really enjoyed something or really hated something, let me know in the comments below, or if you have another video like this, also leave a link down in the comments below because I'd love to come check it out. I'm always looking for new books that I want to read next year. And speaking of next year, I am not going to be doing a reading challenge on Goodreads. I'm only going to set it for one book because I'm tired of trying to pressure myself into reading a certain amount of books per year, especially considering next year I'm going to be starting my master's program and I'm working a lot more, and I just don't have as much time for reading as I used to since my job is really exhausting. And I just want to focus on books that I want to read, not things that I feel pressured to read from the community. And I just want to read really good books that really interest me. So that being said, if you are also doing a reading challenge or not, let me know in the comments below too. Otherwise, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye! Oh, and Happy New Year, of course!